Welcome to the Elokus podcast. This is class number 4 in the discourse Nachamu Nachamu Ami, and which is the 12th discourse in the great book B'Shoshek Dimo 5672. And this is the third class in chapter 45. Okay, in the last class we were learning that explaining how that the 10 spheros, the 10 attributes, as they manifest from world to world, is already it's not the same. It's not because this is all a continuation to trying to explain the main theme that we're learning, how the Or Pnimi, the internal light, comes down in a manner of ischalkos, in a manner of division, and therefore it's not the same from level to level. It's downgraded, and just like there's a down grading from the sphirot itself. Chachma is considered higher as all the various different elements that we spoke about at that Bina, and both in terms of the light that flows in it, in terms of the essential quality of it. So from the worlds as well, the main spheres, he says, are in Atzilus. Once they translate already into the next world, it's like already it's an imitation. It's no more the original of the original. It's already something else. Like he explains, like the example of the Zohar gives, like the difference between the king himself or the portrait of the king or the image of the king that is on the signature or on the stamp, on the seal of the king. It's already on something else, and later on the wax, kind of. So he was giving an example that we can understand that all experience of the 10 spheros and everything that happens after the world of Atzilus, there's a parsa. A parsa is a partition. And therefore, let's say, for example, the comprehension or understanding of godliness that happens, the recognition of the divine, that, or the understanding or appreciation of the divine that happens in the 3 lower worlds from Bria and onward, is like understanding godliness through a metaphor. That's the idea that it's imprinted on something else. The substance, the very substance of reality, is already something else. In it, there is a investment of God and an understanding of God through something else. So he explained in last class that as we ourselves understand these differences, what that something else is, we are confined down here in this lower world through in the construct of time. Of space, and everything we perceive, even when we perceive the divine, we're stuck in the with the limitation of a spatial entity, and even in our most abstract thinking, we're still stuck in space. But the angels that are above the 9th spiritual sphere, or sphere that's around the heavenly sphere that's around the earth, they're outside of time. Outside of space. And yet, they too are not perceiving the divine with absolute accuracy and clarity. They too are perceiving it within a form of substance of existence that is very refined, that we don't know what that is, but that's a limitation in the minds of the angels, as opposed to pure divine light, when it's not covered or concealed by the somethingness of existence. That was the idea that we were learning until now. And now we go all the way at the bottom of I'm using the blue book, and this one, it's 2 lines before the end of the first page of Daf Ayin Ches. And even this idea that we say that the supernal mother, which is Bina, she finds her nest b'kursai on the throne. So this is a statement of the Zohar which depicts that the world of Bria facilitates within it. The world of Bria is called Olam HaKisei, the world of the throne, and as opposed to Atzilus, which is above the throne. Atzilus is the man himself, is God himself in the world of Atzilus. And then God sits down on the throne. He's sitting, Vayeshev Hashem Melech, Hashem sits down as a king, Lo Olam, to the world. He sits like kind of in the world, on the highest peak of the world. What's the highest world? The world of Bria. And that's the Kisei, that's the throne. In the world of Bria, it says, Amy Allah, the supernal mother, rests there. What does that mean? That the world of Bria is dominated with a very powerful manifestation and dwelling of the divine attribute of Bina, which would imply that there is a great capacity of divine intelligence to the creatures and beings that are living in that world, because that world has the frequency, so to speak, of Bina, which Bina enables divine intelligence. So why are we saying that the intelligence of the world of Bina is already a compromised, it's already a convoluted intelligence, it's already coming through a metaphor? Isn't there a direct revelation of Bina, which is understanding in that world of divine intelligence? So he says, no, even though that's true, cannot compare the Bina as it is in the world of Bria and the world of creation, like to the way it is in the world of Atzilus. Yes, Bina dwells in the world of Bria, and it is a very high level intelligence in that world. We know Gan Eden is there. That's where all the hasaga, all the grasping of the neshamas, of the souls in Gan Eden. The higher Gan Eden is the world of Bria. That's where the super intelligence of the divine. But you still can't compare that to the purity of intelligence as it is in the world of Atzilus. It's already a whole different type of Bina than it is in its pure source, where the original spheroids are, which is in the world of Atzilus. The Batzilus, because in the world of Atzilus, Bina is unified with Chachma in the world of Atzilus. So the Bina is in a much more elevated state because it's attached to the pure light of Chachma. The pure essence of intelligence is really Chachma. As we were learning earlier in the earlier classes, Chachma is the flash of an idea, the pure light of the idea. Bina is already wordying it, putting it into words, putting it into, taking the chitzonius, the external. But when the Bina is attached to the Chachma, which means the Chachma is illuminating the Bina, then even the Bina is filled with the light, with the oyer, with the illuminance of intelligence. But when the Bina separates from Chachma and the Bina becomes more stiff and more rigid in its definitions, in its explanations, and it's not tuning in to the pure edelkeit, what we call the refinement and the abstraction of the energy of it, that's already a very weak Bina. It's a very, I want to say distorted Bina, but it's a very watered down Bina. So the real Bina is supposed to be like we say about Chachma and Bina, that the Trei and the Loim is Parsha, they're two friends that never separate. It's like when you have explanation and you lost the point. It's like, okay, yeah, you have all kinds of you're reading something and you're understanding kind of what you're reading, but you feel like you lost, like what's the main point over here? It's a whole different story than when you're reading something and you see how every particle that you're understanding is part of a greater truth, part of a greater concept and a greater idea. Sometimes if you're tired, if you think, or you're reading just a memory and you're lost it kind of in the amount of trees that you're analyzing all the details, you lost the forest, you lost the greater picture. So we feel very much that you're lost. Even though you have Bina, you're still lost. The Batzil, in Atzilus, the Chachma and the Bina are very unified, they're very tight. Like it says, that the river flows from Eden. This is referring to the Torah, referring to the first description of a river that flows to the Garden of Eden. There's a place called Eden, from there comes a river. So the wording that implies is Venar Yaitse. Yaitse means in the current, that the river is going out. The fact that it says the river is emerging, doesn't say the river emerged, implies that the river is constantly emerging from Eden. So Eden is the spring, and then the river comes from the spring. So as it's translated in the mystical meaning of this, is that Eden is the spring of Chachma, which Chachma is the place of innovation, where the first epiphany of godliness comes into revelation, into manifestation. Because above Chachma is utterly infinite and boundless and unknown. It's dark. The first ability of revelation of some divine power is in Chachma. But Chachma is still a very abstract point. And that's why it's considered like a spring. It's like a small little trickle because it's very nothing. You don't really have anything yet. Then it goes into the broad world of Bina. It's like a river, where the water of a spring is more hidden. The water that comes out of a river is very identifiable. You can point the spring. You don't know where it is. You're looking for the spring. You know somewhere. You can see that there's water coming from somewhere. Where is it bubbling from? It's hidden. But the river is on the surface. It is very, very noticeable and very present. So Bina is already a farm where godliness becomes more definable. In Chachma, it's not defined. So the Chachma is called Maayon, the river, the spring, and Bina is called Nahar. Now, what this verse is emphasizing is that originally, if you catch the river right next to the spring, you realize that the river is constantly emerging from the spring, which means the river is in contact with that spring. What that really means is that the Bina is attached to Chachma. But where is that? That's in the original emanation of the Sfirot in the world of Atzilus, where they're very deeply, tightly packed one with the other. So the Bina is plugged into the Chachma in a very intense manner. And of course, what that does is it creates tremendous or very brilliant light in the Bina. You don't hear so much the definitions, you hear more the illumination. Although you're understanding details, because that's why it's Bina, but the details are lost in the point. The river is Bina. As it is known, the Chachma, Bina, the Chachma, Bina, him kamoy Maayon venar, are like a spring and a river. The Maayon on Neviah Daka. Maayon is a very thin Neviah, a very thin flow. Shezau b'chenas ayin the Chachma, which is the nothingness of Chachma. Ubina and Bina b'chenas is pashtos, and Bina is a spreading, is an expansion. Uksiv in the verse Chulu. Uksiv and it says venar yotzeh, that the river is emanating, the river is emerging. Shu yotzeh tamid, is constantly going out b'li hafsek, without an interruption. Hainu b'chenas yichud dveikos, which means, that the Bina is in a state of unity, dveikos and attachment, but afterwards ksiv, umisham yipared, and then it says, but then it separates. So it's referring, if you follow the river downstream, it goes into the garden, and then it says, after it passes through the garden, it says misham yipared, from there it forks into 4 rivers. So on the simple level, it means that you're watching a river, and then a river hits a fork, and some of the river goes up north, and the other side of the river goes down south. That's a fork in the river. So you end up now with 2 streams with 2 rivers. And the Pasuk is describing that how one river becomes 4 rivers. That's discussed here in Genesis and Bereshis. The deeper meaning of this is that the Maayon, the Eden, which is the Maayon, which is the spring, that's Chachma. The Nahar, the river, that's Bina. And the river goes through the entire world of Atzilus, because as we know, Bina, the emotions, Bina, the understanding, supports, gives birth, and then supports the emotions. The emotions are driven by understanding, as we know that when we have a richer understanding and appreciation of something, then our emotional attachment to it can be stronger. And then eventually, that river flows all the way down into Malchus, which is speech. That would be like a person speaking intellectually, so their intelligence reaches their mouth, their speech. But then it says that's the end of the world of Atzilus. Then it says, from there, from speech, like in a human, when you're talking, your words leave the speaker and they go outside of you and go into the ears and the listeners that are not part of you. They're already someone else. So too with God, from the end of the world of Atzilus, from the Malchus, which is speech, he speaks and creates worlds. Those worlds are already in a state of separation. They're not connected to the Ein Sof. They're already a feel themselves as separated. But not only are the worlds separated, it creates a sense of separation already, even in the Sfirot, even in the attribute of Atzilus, the divine attributes, when they translate into the world of Bria. Now, they're not chas v'shalom separated from God, because as we discussed earlier, the attributes are still divine, especially the neshama of the attributes. Not like the vessels. The vessels are already considered separate entities. But at least the Or HaNeshama is still a continuation. It's still the Or Ein Sof flowing in a very narrow manner and continuing into the spheros. However, even in the Or, the Chachma and the Bina are not so closely, tightly packed together. And that's the meaning, Misham Yipare. There's already a separation. And what that means is that the Bina is not connected so much to the point. And then you hear the details become very pronounced. Every part of it becomes the kalim, the vessels, the purity of the singularity of the single powerful idea that's holding it all together is not felt so much, but rather the pieces of the bina, and that's already a much lower level of bina, as he says. So even though we say that it's a world of intelligence, but the intelligence compared to the way it is in Atzilus is a very secondary intelligence. And afterwards it says Misham Yiparid, and then it separates. After the bina travels through the entire world of Atzilus, and it gets to the final station in the world of Atzilus, which is kingship, for the last of the spheres. And then it continues further and it expands. And it encloses itself into the state of creation, which is bibiyah, into the three worlds: creation, formation, and completion. That's when it already starts to separate, and the Chachma separates from the Bina. Chachma primarily remains in the world of Atzilus, and Bina continues on into the world of Bria, and the Bina itself is not so connected to the original point, which in the point of Chachma lies the Or Ein Sof. It's already external, separated. You hear much more not the fragmentations, but the details of creation are the hischalkus. You're feeling much more time. I don't want to say time and space mamish, but the concepts of time. You're feeling much more the definitions as opposed to the singular the singular power, which is one God that's creating it all. As it says in that Maayor Shisha Hema Malchus in the first Maayor. The Rosh Hashanah means the first Maayor. Because in Likutei Torah, there's more than one Maayor called Shisha Hema Malchus. And in the first one, he discusses this. And even though that in the world of Bria there is Hasaga, there is much understanding, nevertheless, you cannot compare the hasaga, the grasping of the world of Bria, to the type of grasping, to the type of understanding of the divine that's taking place in the world of Atzilus. That means there are neshamas, there are souls who tap into the world of Atzilus, and their level of understanding is off the charts. It's the purest, deepest, highest level of understanding of the divine, of intellectual grasp of the divine, versus their friends and the other souls and colleagues, so to speak, that are in the lower worlds of Bria, cannot compare in any way to that level of intelligence. And it's not just more or less intelligence. There is more quantitatively. It's a whole different quality of understanding. Why? Because the Bina that shines in Atzilus is a far elevated Bina, enabling all beings of Atzilus who are completely melted into God to experience the intelligence, the understanding in a way that's attached to Chachma, and it's a day that they literally are melting in their understanding. They melt completely into the Or Ein Sof, which is not the case in the world of Bria, because they hear more the definitions, the kalim, and the things like that, not so much the purity of the idea. We can say the klol, the bria. We can say that the general mochen, the general ability of intelligence of the world of bria, notwithstanding the fact that we usually applaud the world of bria and celebrate it as in very intellectual world, he says, but that's only because we're comparing it to the nether world of Yetzirah and the nether world of the world of Asiyah, where we have a very pathetic ability to comprehend and understand. And in Olam HaYetzirah, it might not be pathetic, but it's still a very, very watered down and washed out type of an understanding. It's primarily a world of emotion. And in the world of Bria is where we have a really rich understanding of the divine. but that's only compared to the lower world. But to compare it to the real mochen that happens in the world of Atzilus, that's where the real mochen is, because he says the klolus pchenas hamochen de bria, the general mochen of the world of the world of creation, hem pchenas mochen mashaychem el amidos. Even though there is intellectualism over there, but the intellect over there is primarily to bring forth emotions, which means the primary experience of the world of Bria is an emotional bond with God. But what type of an emotion? A sophisticated, intelligent emotions. We know that in the world of Yetzirah, usually we refer to the world of Yetzirah as the world of emotion. And that's because the emotions of the world of Yetzirah are instinctive emotions, where the emotion is really intensely an emotion. In the world of Bria, the emotions are a different type of an emotion. They're intellectual emotions. We learn in Tanya, we're going to see about it later, that when a person does mitzvahs, and we learn in Tanya that if it brings from the Zohar, that a mitzvah does not soar up unless it's done with him, and unless it has wings. Every mitzvah needs wings. And what are the wings? The love of God and the fear of God serve as the two wings that lift the mitzvah. So over there, he brings from the Zohar that it depends on the quality of these emotions to which world the mitzvahs will soar. Mitzvahs that are done without any emotions remain here in the physical world. Not that it's not a mitzvah, but it remains stuck, so to speak, in the physical dimension. Mitzvahs that are done with instinctive emotions. As a Jew, as a soul, we have it within us to love God instinctively. So if we can awaken those emotions and just feel warm and excited about doing a mitzvah, and feel a certain sense of divine authority and a sense of awe when we do the mitzvah, but it's not coming from an understanding, those mitzvahs soar to the world of Yetzirah, because that's the world of where emotions govern. If you do a mitzvah with love and fear, but the love and fear is generated by a rich understanding, that's a more elevated emotion. Those emotions are called intellectual emotions. It's called midai sichlius, or it's called how's it referred to them in Tanya? Chabad emotions. So those emotions, they bring and elevate the mitzvah, the world of Bria. But what are we seeing? That the world of Bria is also about the emotions. It's just that within the emotions itself, it's an intellectual emotion. But hold it, isn't the world of Bria all about just pure intellect? And intellect is higher than the emotions. So he says, no. The entire intelligence of the world of Bria is the lower end of intelligence, where the intelligence is not intelligence for the sake of intelligence, it's intelligence for the sake of stimulating emotions. So it's the bottom half of the emotions, or the lower third of the emotions, or whatever you want to call it. It's the tail end of not of the emotions, of the intellect, of the intelligence. The intellect that's meant to stimulate emotions and to guide emotions and to inspire emotions is a inferior intelligence. Pure intelligence for the sake of intelligence is utterly above emotions. And as we learned in the earlier Maayor, it's completely beyond the excitement of the emotions, because to feel to be excited about an emotions, you have to be in tune with yourself. The whole point of an intellect is to transcend yourself and allow your consciousness to dissolve in the reality of something else. So when you do that, really, you don't have any emotions. Your emotions are quiet, not because you're dead, but because you're so attached to something above you that you're lost in something. You get swallowed up in that thing, and in this case, that thing is God. You become lost in God in such a high level. That's pure intelligence. But that only happens in the world of Atzilus. In the world of Bria, being that we're in a created state, because Bria means creation, creations feel themselves. So in that state, the dominant element is emotions, because emotion is how I feel. However, being that it's an intelligent world, it's what type of an emotion? It's an intellectual emotion. And he says, in the general intelligence of the world of Bria is intellect. It's not intellect for the sake of intellect. It's the external of the intelligence. This is already a fundamental difference. So earlier we were saying that the bina that's in the world of bria versus the bina that's in the world of atzilus is that the bina in atzilus is attached to chachma, but the bina in the world of bria and Yetzi, the world lower than atzilus, is already the bina on its own. Now we're learning. Now we're diminishing it even more. And we're saying it's not just the difference if the bina is here attached to chachma or the bina is on its own, but even in the bina itself, it's an external level of bina that's shining in it's intelligence that's meant to bring excitement. It's not meant to take you inside the reality of something. It's meant to keep you on in your space and to tickle you and excite you. By what? By an understanding of how beautiful something is. But so that's just the externality of something. Because the internal element of something is the thing as it is for itself, not like it excites other things. The more external we are to somebody, the more when we meet them and we inquire about them, the more we're thinking about how am I benefiting from you? What am I getting from you? The more deeper our friendship is with somebody, we can really lose ourselves in their reality and really want to know how they are, because we want to know what they are, how they're doing. Nothing to do with me. But when we're just, having a short and weak interaction with someone else, so and then I'm really just living in my reality. So even when I'm inquiring about you, I want to know you as you are, kind of affecting me. Okay, we're going to speak about that more in the next classes. It says the closest the general power of the mochin, the bria of the world of bria. These are the mochin that have a connection to the midos. The hine no that is no she is based madreges b'mochin. There's two levels of mochin. Mochin be'etzem. There is the mochin as it on for themselves. Mochin ashaychem ala midos, and there is the mochin that have a shaychus to the midos, and the mochin of the mochin be'etzem, that's he's going to explain soon, is in the world of Atzilus, and the mochin, the bina that comes down into the lower worlds, is the mochin hashaychem elamidos, which means external level of emotion. And all of this, and we're going to conclude with this for this class, all of this is to make us understand this idea that we're speaking about earlier, how the entire system, since that's operating in this evolution of Or Pnimi, is all a system where the higher internal elements of things remain higher and only the external moves lower. And this whole system works that way. External of external of external as it moves down, down, down. And that's because it's all being governed by a kav, which kav is a measuring element, and the reason the kav is doing that is because the kav is also coming from the Or Ein Sof that's before the Tzimtzum, where that level of Or Ein Sof that's before the Tzimtzum was not Hashem revealing himself for himself, but the light that Hashem is revealing himself already even before the Tzimtzum, with the intention of it being revealed to someone, which is called the Esespheres Agnuzais, all as we discussed earlier. Okay, that is this. We'll leave it by this and we'll continue tomorrow, Bez Hashem.